The X-tinction Agenda, comics of the 80s, 90s, and more.
So we're back with the X-tinction Agenda, the only podcast on the internet where two men talk about comics on their porch. I'm James.
Oh, and I'm also James.
Yeah, two grown men on their porch talking about comics, hiding from their children. It's this is what you came for.
This is what it's about.
Yeah. So today we're talking about Ultimate X-Men Volume 1.
Yes.
So these came out in February to July of 2001. And then we got ourselves finally back to Chuck Dixon. Chuck Dixon. Team 7, issue 1 through 4, 1994. So lots of good stuff happening.
Great stuff, really.
Yeah. So you selected Ultimate X-Men
a real
for our
treat.
X-Men choice.
Yes.
And I gotta say, this comic's fucking trash, man.
Man, okay, listen. Yeah, this was I remember this very fondly. What year did you say again?
2001.
2001. Fresh-faced. Was a young man.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Millar and
Yeah.
Andy Kubert. And with Adam Kubert as well, has a nod.
Yeah, both of the
in
Kubert
artwork.
children.
Kubert brothers, very good artists, real throwback style, similar to their father Joe. And I have a real romanticize with the. As soon as I opened it up, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this. It was awesome. And then I started reading it, and well, it fell short of my memories. But it I don't know.
Yeah, I might as well comment on it now before we get into it. But I think. It's interesting that. So what do I want to say? That ultimately, one of the reasons I was disappointed about this book is because it is so retrogressive. It's supposed to be the entire X-Men line being shot forward into the future, but with the Kuberts attached, it can't help but he was regularly drawing X-Men prior to this run. Like these guys were just all over X-Men, and so there's nothing new about it. There was nothing fresh visually about it.
Well, they attempted to do that by refreshing costumes, decreasing the age of the characters, giving Wolverine what we affectionately call a pussy tickler type of goatee.
Yeah. Okay. That's charming. Honestly, I've never heard that.
I'm so sorry.
It makes perfect sense.
So sorry to drop that bomb early in this episode.
Yeah.
I didn't really like what I saw. Yeah, I would avoid that.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, not happy with it. That's what they did, though. That's what they thought would maybe give it that forward motion. But, yeah.
Yeah, and what's another interesting thing about this, and another reason it's significant, is because Grant Morrison's New X-Men, is going to drop 3 months later, and it makes this entire initiative obsolete. We're going to get a Scottish writer, and we're going to get a hot artist, and we're going to put them together, and we're going to do some X-Men like no one's ever seen. And 3 months later, they actually do it right.
That would toilet this.
Yeah, absolutely. And Millar, but to Millar's credit, he writes overlapping hits. He was writing before this. He wrote The Authority. We've got Ultimate X-Men, then he's gonna go right over to the Ultimates. The comics landscape's gonna change drastically as the result. I mean, you can draw a direct line, but go on.
Sorry, that makes me feel like you really phoned this in then.
Yeah. He could have done so much better. But you can draw a straight line, I think, from this book to the Marvel Comics universe. I think this is the true origin point of that entire universe. And so it's interesting and significant in that regard as well. Although I think the movies actually do a much better job at any of the superhero stuff than Millar does, but because he will later do Ultimates, it all starts here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and this was like a very like this was like a full reboot, right? And he did it in like, which I don't know if you thought in any way was semi clever, but he sort of like springboarded into the storyline in just like a hyper aggressive and fast way. Like, so if you didn't know any of these characters, you got kind of a rough ride, you got a rough intro. You did get some info about the Sentinel program and the government support. You got that Dark Knight and RoboCop style news reporting type of thing, and he really flushed out like a full origin in like 6-7 pages, before because he wanted to tell his story, right? But he needed to bang out the origin, and I thought he did it in kind of a slick way, almost like the movie Blade 2, your favorite introduction.
Right.
Blood
orgy.
Yeah, they were like, I'm a vampire that lives during the day and kills vampires at night. That's it. Boom, bang, shotgun style, and then into your own story, right?
Yeah. The problem, so I agree. This is elegant to the extent you can say that anything Millar does is elegant. I would say a lot of his stuff is elegant if he wasn't so crude at the same time, like purposefully crude.
Yeah, the real aggressive humans and the butchering of mutants in the streets and the like, you were just like, wow, this is like, I get the point. Like, mutants are persecuted, but like, you really like put it 100-fold,
Yeah, well, the opening shot is like, one, you got gratuitous sexy leg lady. And then these robots come from the sky and step on him like a bug, and you're like, okay, I guess that's one way you do it. But it is I want to get back to what you were saying about the Sentinels, though. It is interesting that he essentially goes straight to Days of Future Past, which I think is also another retrograde step. Like, he just goes straight to like, Sentinels are patrolling the air and sky and hunting mutants.
Right. And like, they're not just hunting mutants, like they're not imprisoning mutants. Their program is not like in any
they're
way.
exterminating them,
Yeah. There's no truce. There's no nothing. It's like it's D-Day for mutants, right?
Yeah, well, and the implication, and they allude to it and show it, but Magneto's been engaged in terrorist attacks, and we have to remember that this is July 2001. September 11th. Wait, no, has September 11th happened yet? I guess not, because it was September 11th, 2001. So I guess in that respect, it's prophetic.
Yeah. Wow. I guess we should have fact-checked dates on that, but I didn't really, back to that. Yeah.
Well, he's got George Bush and everything. Oh, interesting. Well, anyway.
Yeah.
Magneto's engaged in terrorist activities, and so they go fucking whole hog on the Sentinel program.
Yeah, and the teenagers too. The teenager style gave them I think that's probably what probably made you feel like it was just a toilet bowl story. Was the teenager thing gave it like?
Oh, you're absolutely right.
Like less depth, Like it's almost like you had characters that you could shotgun introduce and tell a story with, and you took depth away from them by making them idiot teenagers. You turned it into Archie with violence. No.
Oh no, and you're right. That does now, like, when you put it like that, then I think I agree with you. But also and this is petty, but it is a visual medium. And the Kuberts, who were 40 years old at this point, couldn't draw hype teenagers to save their life at this point.
No, that's
like everyone looks like shit. They look like trash.
They look like a fucking like an 80s arcade slut. Like I'm not sure what I'm seeing.
Yeah, no, she's straight out of Hackers or something.
He was like this hot High Five's brother.
Yeah. Check it out, Dad.
Oh,
Jesus. Yeah. So, but that said, I like to see that there was so-called reasons behind the existence for the costumes. That they masked their mutant signature. I was like, okay, fine. That's dumb, but hand wave, I'll let that happen.
Yep, you gotta give it a pass.
And there's this and we're gonna have a post-human baptism by giving you a name that represents your powers. And I was like, okay, well that's dumb too, but whatever.
You can have a pass. Yeah, it was like a shock. It was like a shock version of X-Men, and then even the bottle to the head on Iceman. I
don't remember that.
Yeah, it was in the opening scene with the Sentinel that squished the dude, and then Iceman saved a bunch of humans by freezing a Sentinel, and then they just threw a bottle at his head. It died,
I remember, and he's upset, right?
Yeah, and he was like, "Oh God, what the hell? I just saved you, idiots!" And they're basically Trump supporters. They didn't care.
Well, they're cartoonish mobs. It's
cartoon mobs.
Yeah, potato, right?
And then they did the Magneto was a ruthless racist monster.
Yeah, and this is a weird thing for me to say, but when Cyclops looks at him and he's like, and it's such a stupid full page spread moment, and he looks at him and he's like, you sound exactly like Adolf Hitler, and I was like, well, not really. He doesn't. He's something else. But I think that goes back to him dumbing everything down.
Yeah, he's just trying to make it. Yeah, he's
like Millar dumbing everything down.
Yeah, exactly. He's trying to sell his story, and he's like, I want Magneto to be basically. I think that he wanted him to seem maybe as driven or as one-track minded as Hitler. Maybe I don't know if that was maybe something he thought the audience could kind of latch onto as kind of a quick idea. Is maybe the way he pushed, the way he wanted it pushed. And then
it's a facile analogy that everybody can grasp. Oh, he's super evil.
Yeah, and then they did the pacemaker scene, right? Squitch. Rip this little Arab guy's pacemaker out of his chest. All these humans are dogs.
Yeah, and they're in Serbia. So he's evoking all of these. I don't want to totalitarian, genocidal terms and images and locations in order to do the work that he ought to actually be doing. And I guess that gets down to what Millar's, he's all flash and he's so little substance, and he gets away with it constantly because he's amazing in an action scene.
Yeah, and they had those scenes in this book too. There were scenes the pace, no matter what you how cheap and blah the intro to this was, and how just whatever the whole introduction to the X-Men were. When they did pull the trigger on a couple of scenes, they started to get disturbing early on, and they had their moments that I can just think back on now, Xavier. Doping Cyclops with dopamine, just being an absolute creep. That was just a moment where I stopped on the page, and then the pacemaker thing again, and
and this gets back to the thing that you had alluded to in our previous conversation about people evoking Professor X's sinisterness. In this, we're all thinking calm thoughts now, and I guess that's how you do it, and it's nice to see that, that he's not perfect. But yeah, it's not something. It's definitely not heroic. I guess we'll say that.
Oh, that's for sure. And also, I mean, it's not you have to feel he's only able to keep people pushing his agenda based on creepy interventions. And I think that's the seed. That's one of the seeds, for that. Mm-hmm. Because his agenda, actually, if you are a legitimate mutant, being hunted to death in the streets, women, children, there is no possible way that Professor Xavier's agenda makes any fucking sense to you.
No, and it's nice to see them call it out. And actually, one thing that I liked about this is that it wasn't they made the first mission a mission to stop a war. And that made a lot more sense to me as motivation, because they posit that if humans actually fully attack mutants, if they fully attack Magneto, it's the end of the world. And that's the premise that drives all the action. And if you accept that premise, then it all makes sense.
And it does make sense. It is that's the moment where you're okay, I can kind of see that Xavier feels like this is his moment to get his angle, like to get his negotiating angle. And then you're well, even though he's semi-unscrupulous and I'm not really even sure what his agenda is, it does make a little bit of sense, at least.
Yeah.
And then that's a very basic plot, and it's just basic. It's so soft-handed that, I mean, it's barely even readable, like you said. But then they put Wolverine in as the planted assassin, which I feel like gives a little more tension to the basic plot. I don't know. I think that's maybe what made it a little bit more of a pass. But
yeah, I guess at the I read it. I didn't put it down, but I was just I didn't like it when it first came out. I guess I should say that. I didn't have any romantic notions of this work. I remember being profoundly disappointed with it.
Yeah.
He who could do so well does no better, is how I felt.
Right.
And yeah, but at the same time, it's very readable. It does the work that you want it to do. It's just not the work that I really enjoy, and it's not what I'm looking for out of X-Men. To the extent I'm looking for anything out of X-Men, I didn't need this reboot. I don't know who this is for, and I guess maybe that's the thing.
Yeah.
Who
I
is
know
this
what you
for?
mean. I give, and I tend to give some things like a pass on art styles that I liked in the past, and I mean I always, I in my heart I tried not to prioritize that, and I tried to be highbrow with however highbrow you can be when you're reading Marvel comics, but I tried to at least engage in reading what the best of the best was supposed to be as well, and not be like swayed by art. But the Kubert brothers always delivered such a nice style of sequential art that I liked, that was similar to Joe's, even if some of it was bad or the costumes were hacky, but they had a consistency that they delivered.
For sure. And this is tangential, but I'm reading a biography of Joe Kubert right now. And it's interesting to see, and another reason I thought about these comics as retrograde is because, Joe's style comes out of the 40s, and the Kuberts are very, very close to his style.
Very close. They've basically been schooled by, which
literally.
is an awe, almost like a tradesman.
Yeah. No, and that's actually very fitting, given his upbringing, given Joe Kubert's upbringing. Theirs is a little less elongated, I guess. Later period Joe Kubert is I would say his characters are more distended, and it's a bit choppier. But anyway, it just added, I guess maybe reading that biography at the same time as I was reading this, I found myself thinking especially about how this was so rooted in the past, and if their goal was to break through into the future, then they had essentially chained themselves to the ground, and as a consequence failed to launch. But I mean, we could complain. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that, and the and I mean, they're no Joe either. Joe's a real, I mean, just an all-time great, and the as much as and Adam and Andy are similar, but not, I don't know.
No, they don't have the magic sauce that their dad had. He'd been drawing since he was 16. Yeah.
No. Some of his Sergeant Rock stuff and the iconic images and stuff, he was on a different level, but looking back, like you say, it does it ties so bad, it looks so much like throwback art that it almost it doesn't, you can't really launch a new style or shock the audience with that same old style, right?
Yeah, because the Kuberts, I looked up their timeline. He finished drawing Uncanny X-Men so he could take over Ultimate X-Men, so where's the breaking point here?
There was, if you were reading Uncanny X-Men, you flowed from that to that, right? It doesn't change.
Now, maybe that was the thinking commercially. They were just okay, this is an easy sell on a risky product. And that's fair if so, but I don't know.
This probably worked on me.
Yeah. I really... one thing I'll say, and this gets back to Millar's, some of the action sequences are this may sound like a backhanded compliment. I don't mean it that way, but they're worthy of the Fast and the Furious franchise. Like when Wolverine and Jean Grey, they're saving the president's daughter, and they fly straight into the back of the jet or whatever, and it's just like this perfect, like, by the numbers, tack tack tack, crazy scene. And you could totally see it in a movie. He has such a cinematic instinct.
That was the Wolverine drove the car, and yeah. President's daughter. That was so cheap.
Yeah. The whole thing's so it's kind of.
What do you think about
cheap.
The Wolverine character? The assassin that kisses Jean Grey and then side glances for Cyclops' reaction.
Yeah, the whole thing, he went straight to the love triangle aspect too. I guess that's another thing where Millar was just like, I'm just going to pick the bits. I didn't buy it.
Yeah.
And he felt stupid. Like, he didn't feel like the world's greatest assassin. He just felt like a stupid idiot,
Yeah, he was.
And the only time they give him any that really make him seem dangerous is in a virtual reality simulation, when he murders all the X-Men, which I guess gets back to what I was saying about Millar being flash, not substance. Like, that's almost literally the case. I'm virtually cool, bub.
Ouch.
Yeah, sorry, man.
Yeah. And Cyclops comes off as far more effective than Wolverine.
He does, and actually,
all circumstances, he defects. He resists Xavier's mind powers. He doesn't put up with Jean Grey's bullshit. He just walks.
Yeah. No, and he gets a really good comeuppance scene at the very end, like Volume 5 of Ultimate X-Men, which I'd reread relatively recently, which I actually really enjoyed. I thought that was basically a better retelling of this story. Anyway, but so and it gets back to actually to how the interaction with John Byrne and Wolverine under Claremont, where they were more evenly matched. They were equally effective. And it needs to be that way. If you ever get the impression that the leader of the team isn't Captain America, then I don't know. It's
that's just it. Is you have to have your rival figure has to have some clout. Like, if you're gonna butt heads and have a rivalry and have somebody like step up to the plate and say, I could do this better than you, bub, or whatever, then I need to feel like I need Captain America to bump up against Iron Man. I need to be nervous,
Yeah.
Like, you didn't get that. You didn't catch that. You caught that Wolverine was in a sex dungeon and had no intention of killing Charles Xavier, which basically takes all the piss out of the plot.
Yeah, I never actually felt ever, like rereading it, that and I tried to read it as if I'd never read it before. But yeah, looking at it, you're absolutely right. There was never any real sense that he was in danger. The X-Men, the guy Wolverine comes in and then he's like, I'm just going to sleep with this woman and join their cause, join their team. I'll even confess. Maybe later volumes prove us wrong, but if you had to judge by this first volume, I'd say that there was never any concern, and it's Flash, not substance.
Yeah, and then they did the "Call Me Daddy" scene with the Magneto and Cyclops.
Oh fuck, that's weird. Yeah, you're right. Could you call me father in front of him?
Yeah, was he trying to put, as if Quicksilver doesn't have it fucking sad enough?
Yeah,
living in the shadows.
That's a funny way to because Quicksilver's a loser.
He is, and he really he had no clear agenda of his own.
Yeah, he just wanted they once did a ranking. I read this on just recently on a comic book website. Once, like in the 50s or 60s, Marvel did a ranking of who was important, in the Marvel universe, for story-wise And Quicksilver came in last, and he was like a member of the Avengers at this time. It's just
like Magneto could have had like a powerless son named Billy that was good at varsity baseball, and you would have been able to use him in the same plot style if you needed it.
Yeah,
and
son of
fucking whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know if that makes any sense, but he's just he was a nothing character. It doesn't matter what he can or can't do. He just it was just so it's just his in and out of the story is just disposable at any real given time.
Yeah. So many of the the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants or whatever, the Brotherhood, the terrorist organization. Yeah, I didn't learn anything about Blob or Toad. I just they were just ugly and fat and stupid.
What good are they? What? And then Magneto had terrifying power, like again.
And that was and that was good to see, to the extent that it props up the central tenet or the premise of the entire plot, which is that like if Magneto finally unlocks, then we're fucked.
Well, he came down on the X-Men, came in fully militarized, completely ready. Basically, the person who wasn't even on their team saved the president's daughter. And then one of them almost died in ridiculous haphazard, just basically running military drills improperly, and then the Beast got squished. And then Magneto came, diffused the entire situation, landed, and there wasn't even any like ability to challenge him. He was just so powerful that he came. He called them prattling children. He saved Beast's life for them. And then he told them to piss up a rope.
Yeah, and that's appropriate.
It's hard to
yeah,
it's hard to
That's what you want to see from Magneto, though.
Well, that's the way Magneto should be, though. There shouldn't be let's get him with a friggin' I-beam. It's not going to happen. It's too much.
Yeah.
His power when it's broadcasted the way it's supposed to be. The scary way is that like when it's on the table, when he shows up and he's like, I've had enough. It's over.
So that's nice to see. I guess that's a virtue that we ought to recognize in Millar's sort of revamp here, because you don't necessarily get that. I mean, we for certainly didn't get that in our previous episode.
No, we got spanked by a metal guy. Stupid.
I wanted to another reason that Wolverine doesn't work for me, and I don't want to complain too much about this, but I have to.
So out of character.
Well, when he's killing everybody virtually, and this is more of a complaint for Mark Millar, that because basically there's Millar-isms, and one of them, or just the ways that Millar-esque dialogue. So it's like, I wrote it down as a quote: it's like cracking heads in the Spina Bifida ward. And I'm like, so he's basically calling them retards while he murders them, but you can't do that, right? You can't actually write that, but you still want to write it because you're Mark Millar. So you make it, you look up, it's some sort of neurodegenerative disability, and you use the fancy word, and you get away with it. And it's not something that Wolverine would say, for one, and then two, it's stupid. Like, say it out loud. No one in the history of the world is ever going to say that phrase. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out.
It wasn't well delivered, and I guess it was something maybe he thought was clever, or like a clever.
Oh, I'm certain he thought it was clever. Yeah,
but that's the problem. You really would have been better off just being like, "You guys are idiots," But
something simple like that. It's like fighting a bunch of idiots, inbred idiots. Fine, whatever, something. So anyway, I'm not personally offended by it. I'm just kind of like, I just think it's a weird tick that he has in his writing, as that he'll often try to, he'll use a technical phrase as an insult, that it's a really basic insult. And in the future, maybe we'll have an opportunity that I can point out more Millar-esque phrases, but whatever.
Hopefully. I mean, I guess, I mean, if
we
you're
got to read the
of-
Ultimates one day.
Oh, I feel like it's gonna be not as good as I remember it.
Oh, I disagree. That book's amazing. You know, I could be wrong as well, and maybe I'm romanticizing it, but fuck, that book was great, is what I remember.
Yeah,
So.
Maybe it was better, and like, I mean, just I don't know. Maybe he just like he has to find characters that he would prefer to tool around with more, or they might cut open the creative freedom a bit more in that book, or it did feel like the violence was able to be turned up, and some more like uncomfortable and distasteful situations were able to be showcased. Which I think he likes to go down. He likes to go down his dark alleys, you know.
Oh, he sure as shit does. Yeah, that guy's fucked up.
And that's the he waits for that moment. Like he'll write a 6-issue arc to have like a main character be burned alive or something, and you have to like choke that down, you know. And that's what he's looking for. He's looking for that like moment, you know. And I think it feels like maybe they tied him down a bit much.
Yeah, they possibly did. You're absolutely right about his tendencies. I think strangely that puts it extremely well. Mark Millar, he's got some troubles.
And but that to me that's a great skill, and it's a great thing. I mean, if you have that idea, if you have that sickening idea, and you can weave it into characters that already exist, and you can upset me, even if it takes you a few issues, and that's the only thing I remember, then I'll look back at that story and I go, ugh, is that awesome, you know?
No, that's okay. Yeah, and if you can evoke a real like a feeling in someone, which allows them to remember the moment when it happened. Like, yeah, you're right. I can't deny that that's a skill, and it's a skill he absolutely has.
And maybe it's a horror skill.
I think
he's in the wrong genre. But
I think it's a skill that he might be actually. I think it's a skill that he learned from Garth Ennis. Mark Millar he's the way I think of him, is a third generation British invasion writer. He apprenticed under Grant Morrison. He came late to the table to all those British writers who were coming in and revolutionizing American comics. And so I just see him as I see him as a hodgepodge of a lot of different styles and techniques, and that aspect of him, rightly or wrongly, because I haven't done a proper think about this, but I see Garth Ennis there, but maybe I'm wrong. What do I know, right?
Yeah, you just kind of you called him a poor man's Garth Ennis just now.
He's a poor man's Garth Ennis for sure. No, he's a different beast. I mean, because he's an action writer. Like any of his books, like there's a reason he writes back-to-back best-selling comics, and why he's got a Netflix deal. Like he's fucking raking it in. He has so many movies made on his characters because he makes books that translate very well to the screen. He's got like I said, a cinematic instinct. And
Kick-Ass was stunning. I'm sorry. It was a great book. It had its splatter moments. It had its characters, and it translated right into a film and just knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, and even begins as early as Wanted, which they didn't follow the comic at all. But you could just he's I don't know if I had to guess who he's actually writing for. He's writing for Hollywood, and if he can get some comics people to buy his books too, great.
He loses all of his oomph without a hard R.
You're right.
Because this X-Men is like a TV 14 style, basically. It could be a mass-produced thing, but it's so weak because he's got the hard R pulled out of it. It's missing something.
Yeah, you might be. I think maybe we've come to the heart of it. Finally, it just needed to be a little harder, and it would have allowed Mark to show what he's capable of. Because I think this book it gestures towards it, but it doesn't do it. I don't have anything else to say about this book. I feel that
Really,
unless you have something
and
else.
also, I do have one more point, and it
Sure,
was that
sure.
oh no, yeah, one other thing, the Magneto reprogramming of Sentinels was the moment for me.
Oh, when he like
Where
opens up
you're
their
like,
heads and
oh
everything.
God, and then he was like, here you go, kill humans instead, and just like no mercy. Oh,
Yeah.
it was a cool moment, scary moment, but then they had the soft ending. Oh, we beat him. Oh,
Yeah.
fuck, man, that was, I don't know. Yeah, and that you're right. That is the bitter end.
Yeah. So one thing we can use this book as a transition point actually for our next topic for old Chuck.
Yes.
As we return to Chuck Watch finally.
Chuck Watch.
Getting into some romantic stuff here.
So, Chuck says that he's blacklisted, and that might very well be true at Marvel, and it might have begun at the same time that. So back in February of 2001, a guy named Bill Jemas took over as publisher of Marvel Comics. And at that time, Chuck was actually writing some Punisher books. He was writing Marvel Knights. He was writing a Doom miniseries, which I think we should really read. That sounds awesome.
Ooh, that does sound good.
Like Doctor Doom miniseries.
Okay.
And so he, so he was doing some work, but I get the impression that he had some contracts that were still, they had to honor. But after 2001, Chuck never writes another Marvel book. And so this, at the same time that Mark Millar is, at the same time as they're launching new X-Men and they're launching Ultimate X-Men and they're trying to make the Marvel universe lucrative again, they're saying bye-bye Chuck.
Yes.
Thanks, but no thanks.
And well, for whatever reason. And then this would be, was this basically his birth into Team 7?
Who, Chucky?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is we've never actually seen Team 7 before this. This is one of the things I'd like to touch on later is that this book is essentially the origin story of the Wildstorm universe.
Right. That as well, like in it, which was really almost a idiotic thing to dump on Chuck Dixon of all people.
Yeah, because the way he goes about it, well, maybe we'll talk about that. Because I think actually this book is perfect. I think this is a perfect comic for its purpose. This was a very exciting book for me in Dixon Watch terms, because I think something important happens in this book, but I don't want to talk about it right away. I think we should talk about the content a little bit.
I really enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, man, this book's fucking amazing. I love the Aaron Wiesenfeld art.
He's an outstanding artist, and he came really hot to the table. The first few pages, the covers were all outstanding.
Yeah, and this might be like maybe his second or third comics work. Like he illustrated comics, he says on his website, and he doesn't name names. It's just like from 1993 to 2001, illustrated many comics. Good. Yeah.
Wise move.
Because as you saw, he's a painter now. And he paints little girls lost in the dark. It's very weird.
Yeah, gorgeous artwork.
Yes,
clearly had a talent outside of comic book illustration, but I don't know that anyone on my resume that I'd want anyone dipping back into Team 7.
Yeah. Because he goes to art galleries and shit. Like this guy's got a proper art career, like high art career now.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to see.
So they did the Team 7 by Chuck Dixon miniseries 1 to 4. They launch in with an aggressive, hardcore military unit. That's what this is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess we'll name the cast. We got John Lynch, and Lynch is.
I got the cast right here. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. We got because basically we're looking like, where did John Lynch come from? The head of what, International Operations, IO.
IO, buddy.
Yeah. Mark Slayton, Backlash. Cole Cash, Grifter. Michael Cray, Deathblow, and Jackson Dane of Waterworks or Wetworks fame.
I also have Christy Blaze, but that might have been a later addition to the team.
I think there's another Blaze later.
Yeah.
I don't know,
and
man.
then there's also Alex Fairchild.
Oh yeah, Fairchild, of course.
He's
yeah,
going to be
because
the
he's gonna.
father of the Gen 13 squad introduced in the Image universe, right?
Yeah, and Lynch is gonna be like their handler or whatever. So it's like
Yeah.
it's all tied in, and so yeah, this is the moment when these guys get. It's the story of where their powers come from, and where, as a consequence, a large portion of the Wildstorm universe comes from.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I recommended this as our Chuck watch. So
Yeah.
you tell me a little bit first about what you thought of it. We already established that it's great, but
Well, yeah, right off the cuff, you get a lot of big dick energy.
you certainly do. Yeah.
It's a lot of it's hard to handle. They're a big military squad. They're jumping out of planes. They're doing it all. Really racist. We're shooting anybody with. They're just turban people, I guess. They're given different locations, and
I spent an inordinate amount of time locating these stories in time and space.
Don't bother.
I already did, man. So these stories take place between 1978 and 1979. And the first location, so far as I can figure out, is Lebanon, but it evokes the Iran hostage crisis. And then later on, they'll be in Egypt. And I know it's after the Egypt-Israeli peace treaty, because they signed that thing on the front lawn of the White House. And so I Googled what was signed on the front lawn of the White House and when. So that was March of 1979. So
he actually, he definitely had a time frame and location and based in reality.
As much as you can, yes. Yeah. So anyway,
I thought shocking and impressive, really.
Yeah, but it doesn't. But at the same time, it doesn't make sense, because after they let's say it is Lebanon, and they find out all those hostages aren't really hostages, then they just call in a carpet bombing, like you can just do that, and it's not an international incident.
Yeah, they give them the old Left 4 Dead scenario, right? Yeah, you guys are done. They're hostage. There were no hostages. They got duped.
Yeah.
And then Cray is ultra aggressive. He's the death blow.
He certainly is.
But he wasn't wrong to be aggressive and angry. Lynch had kind of like a baby soft touch, and he didn't realize that they got fucking worked. Which was this was the first initial mission in book 1.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there was also a TV scene. I think it was in that first issue where they were showing African prisoners killing each other, and reminded me of that old Russian experiment urban legend.
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know. They were looking at it on a TV screen. In the head office, and they were. Yeah,
I remember. At the very end of issue 1. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a prison scenario, and they were all killing each other.
Yeah.
Inside the prison, it just reminded me of that. I don't know why.
Okay.
But and then that was it. That was the screw job that happened, and then did they get bombed at that point?
No, so they're in Lebanon.
They got into that laboratory, and that was the ground zero for the powers, right?
Yeah, so first they're in Lebanon, they find the hostages that aren't really hostages, then they call in a carpet bombing, they hide underneath, then they exfiltrate. They go back to Lynch. Lynch is like, sorry, we got some bad intel. Now have some, time to yourself, some R&R. And then he brings them back in, and he makes them watch the video that you're talking about. And then they go to the friendly, quote unquote, friendly African country, and then they get screwed over. They find all those ditches full of dead bodies. And then they go in, and then they get gen factored.
Right, which is with whether they got gassed or exposed to some like weird radiation or whatever.
Yeah, the gen factor.
And then their powers develop basically in a laboratory, because they all get I don't know, they somehow get brought back to Lynch's headquarters or whatever, right?
Yeah, and they're under observation and everything. They're so you get the strong impression in the background, the obvious impression that they were sent there on purpose in order to get powers,
Right?
And that they've done this to others, and that many of
maybe failed is the feeling, because people, the one guy goes crazy right away.
Yes, yeah, no, and they have so the implication is that many of those dead bodies that they find in the ditches were failed attempts to give people superpowers. And then the other people that they keep in the basement over at Lynch's headquarters are people they were successful with who survived but were turned insane, mutated, whatever, turned into monsters essentially.
Right, but since Team 7 is a wicked ass G.I. Joe unit, they are extraordinary and able to absorb the powers without going insane.
And this is exactly this is a perfect transition to what I want to talk about. Because the Gen factor. Okay, so what do we want to say about this book? I want to say that everything about it screams toxic masculinity.
Right.
Like all the characters are, and I actually looked up like what constitutes toxic masculinity. So it's alpha male posturing, limit all of your emotions to anger, ideal masculine body. So these guys are all fucking ripped. They're angry. They're fucking posturing all the time. There's correlations with violence. Well, this book is pretty much one of the most violent comics you're going to read. Risky behavior, sexual assault, substance abuse. Like, it's just all there. It's pure textbook toxic masculinity.
Throwing knives at each other, catching the knives like ninjas.
Holding a knife. They let you blink in the Marines, jarhead, and you're just like, these guys are the alpha male toxic masculine.
I actually wrote down a Cole Cash quote. Do me a favor, Lynch, and bust a cap in my skull. There's an alpha posture.
Yeah. So, and then, and so, the implication is that the Gen factor, and the Gen factor is, I looked this up as well, it's like some sort of multi-dimensional DNA strand from some fucking space refugee or something like that. The implication is that it breeds in and propagates through toxic masculinity, and that it is toxic masculinity which is that allows the Wildstorm universe to come into being, and take on the modes of expression that it does. And to my thinking, like, Chuck couldn't have accidentally done anything better than to posit that that's the origin of Wildstorm. Because if you look at all the other books, it's echoes of toxic masculinity, given different forms and expressions, but it's always there in the background. And I don't believe for a moment that he meant to do this, but he did it perfectly.
Wow, that's heavy.
Yeah. So I was and then there's more. So when they drop a nuclear bomb on these guys at the end, and then coming together Akira style, they hold off the nuclear assault, and then when this happens, so I'd like to remind you again that this occurs in like 1979, like it's the last time that it's Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter's about to transform into Ronald Reagan, and what do the Russians say? The Russian psychic, when he senses this big event, he's like, I sense that a will is awakening. A great will is finally reawakened, something to that effect. And the implication is not only that in this moment when the Gen factor creates the Wildstorm universe, it also gives birth to conservative ideology in America. It's the capstone of the 70s and the birth of the 80s through toxic masculinity and nuclear warfare. It's just Chuck just knocked it out of the park for me.
That's
Fucking
a lot.
love this. Yeah,
it's awesome. The Akira moment where they deflected the bomb, that actually came after Cole Cash shot Johnson in the face, because he felt like he had just gone too far by like mind controlling people.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
so he
yeah.
just shot him in the face, and then Cash and Lynch, I believe, have a like a fucking Dragon Ball fight.
Yeah, it's more like at a Dark City.
Yeah.
They're just zipping at each other with their like intense stares.
Boom, yeah, and it's just open my neck up with your thoughts or whatever. Fuck. And did you also notice that fucking Big Clay, Big Death Blow, the big boy, actually has got no fucking powers from this?
No, and I think maybe later they'll do something with him, like he's a late bloomer. But
I can't remember.
I'd like him. I prefer that he didn't.
He already
later
had
on,
so much toxic masculinity, I think, to start with, that they couldn't give him anymore.
It's possible.
That
the Jet
maybe
Factor was like, no thanks, but no thanks. Yeah.
It was like, yeah, we can give a little extra to Cole and Lynch because they're babies, but Cray, he's already got it. He's already got it.
And I really like, actually, and I like how Dixon balances. So, while they're having their Akira fight, while they're fighting in a Christian Coptic temple, which was an interesting choice, and I couldn't figure out if there was any deeper meaning to that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's even a guy that makes a comment, why didn't they blow up a Muslim church?
Yeah, and I thought that was interesting too, given that it was 1994. It was a recognition on Chuck's part that America is largely violent, and has been largely violent towards Middle Eastern, towards the Middle East, especially after the 70s. But it took place in the 70s, so I don't know. Maybe it was anachronistic for them to say that. I don't know.
For Chuck to say that, you mean?
Yeah, for Chuck to say that. Yes. He just couldn't help himself.
But then,
did you know that he writes? Oh no, go on.
No, sorry. I go ahead. I want to hear this actually.
Okay, he writes a series of novels now about a guy fighting ISIS. It's just basically the Punisher in the desert fighting ISIS, and I'm desperate to read one.
That you shouldn't buy that.
I'm going deep on Chuck. He mentioned some of his inspirations for these stories, like some of these old 70s novels that he reads.
You're gonna have
a
to
couple.
buy it too, because there's no one that's gonna put this online.
No, I'm not going to be able to. I might be able to steal it, but Chuck, since I'm often going to refer to you as a racist and a nationalist, I'm going to buy your book. That's a promise. Actually, I would like to make a correction on something I said. In our first episode.
I like this. Episode 3, we're going to roll back on a rude comment.
Yeah, so I'm not going to say that Chuck's a racist. I'm going to say...
I think it was me that said he was a racist.
Well, then either way, we should make Chuck's not a racist, but he's the guy, if you give him an opportunity to do so, he will make racial science valid within your science fiction universe. That's all I'm saying.
Like Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm not going to retract my comment. Though.
Well, that's fine. Yeah, I don't know. I'm concerned about labeling him a racist because of something Ra's al Ghul said, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But I'm right. I'm not wrong. If you give him the opportunity, he's going to make racial science valid in your fictional universe, and that's an interesting choice. That's not a choice that a lot of people are going to make.
That's a gross choice.
Yeah. So anyway, back to Team 7. What were
you to Team 7. Oh yeah, I have something here. Good. How many times did Team 7 get duped?
Oh my God, too many times.
Was it 3?
It's at least 3. At least 3.
3 times in a 4-issue miniseries that they got sent on a mission and fucked by... who's the bad guy? Craven? Was that his name?
Yeah, Craven. Yeah.
Craven, yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like...
That's a good name for a villain. We got to be honest about that.
It's a... that was like after the first mission in a realistic world with these big dicks.
Yeah.
Fucking Deathblow would have went back to headquarters and taken someone's head off.
Yeah, they would have filed a report.
He wouldn't have been like, let's go do another. And then, I'm sorry, after they got fucked over on the second mission, they went on a third mission with their powers. Seriously.
Well, it was a real national security or something. I don't know. I
Well,
remember
then
them like,
that was the one they got nuked on.
yeah, which is like, yeah, I agree with you completely. After the second one, twice bitten.
Fuck, you can't you can't possibly go back to headquarters, pick up your paycheck, and be like, oh, y'all got another mission for us? Fuck.
Ready to do or die, Sarge. Yeah, it's fucking stupid. So that was dumb. I'll admit that. I did remember thinking to myself, while that happened, that maybe it shouldn't be happening. I do like that at the end they finally like disappear.
How about the Cray jailbreak on the 4th issue? The big.
What I thought was interesting.
Come on.
No. What I thought was interesting about it is the first 4 pages, and I don't know why they were, but the first 4 pages are just single images of Cray walking and talking with people until he takes action. And I wasn't sure if they were just biding time, like they had pages to fill or whatever. But it was interesting to see these larger images contrasted with like the action scenes of the heroes, the guys who are out there actually in the field. It somehow made Cray's actions as big as theirs, so to speak.
It did, because he basically got cut from the team and then arrested.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just like, I don't know, he had his moment confined in a confined space. It was like claustrophobic, and he's like, I'm not going anywhere with you guys unless it's in a pine box. And he made his stand,
Yeah, I like when he has the gun like taped to the back of that guy's head.
I have that written.
I think about that often
too. The how he had it all woven around his arm, and then they were all horrified. The whole poor captain still got his hat on, and he's got the shotgun tied to his head. And he just he alerted his team and saved the boys. Saved the unit, basically.
Yeah, no, he did. Without them, they would have been bombed. I mean, like more bombed, unprepared bombed, I guess we'll say.
So is that the wrap up on Team 7, or
I think for me it is. I don't know what else to say. Okay. Like I really enjoyed it, but and I had a grand theory about it, and I mean it was great, man. Great time. Chuck's great. He's problematic.
Whatever. What are you gonna do? I mean, like we're gonna have our good times and our bad times.
Yeah, and I think the bad times are going to outweigh the good times. But, there'll always be Team 7.
Yes.
So anyway.
Okay, so we've come to the point in the show.
Yeah. Where I roll a D4 in order to see what we're going to be doing next week.
I'm just going to glaze over this. Number 1, comics of the 80s and 90s. Number 2, general culture. Number 3, back to Chuck Watch. Number 4, the classics corner.
So I got my D4. We're going number 1.
Number 1, Daredevil, number 184 and 185.
Okay. What happens in these ones?
I don't know. It was a magic moment, apparently.
Okay. Is this the Electra shit?
This is like a fucking two issue. I'm not sure why it's good.
All right, man. Cool. Done. Okay, man. So this was great. I guess unless you got any final words.
No, that's the Extinction Agenda signing off, I guess.
All right, man. Signing off.
Now all we need is a little energon and a lot of luck.